Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Year Blank What Now podcast. My name is Marcy Nettles, and I am your host. And I am so excited to be here with you again today to be able to bring in a new guest with a new story that has similar, situations to others in having a breakdown. But he made some massive decisions and commitments to himself to break through. So I am really excited to have this guest share his story with you today. Chris Mitchell may know the meaning of many words, but quitting is not one of them. Chris has faced disabilities, which he calls challenges, since the day he was born. Chris is a person who is visually impaired, neurodiverse, a mental health warrior who battles depression, and the biggest challenge he faces is a physical disability. Despite it all, he is a two-time award-winning speaker, a three-time self-published author, and host of the successful Self-Employed and Disabled podcast, a certified confidence life coach, and the founder and CEO, Chief Empowering Officer at hashtag Define Yourself, a business whose mission is to develop a thriving disabled community, one person at a time. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here, Chris.
Thank you so very much for having me today and giving me the opportunity to speak to your wonderful audience. After hearing that intro, this Chris Mitchell guy sounds really fascinating.
I know, right? He's pretty cool. I can't wait to
Yeah.
hear more about him. Well, we decided together that your title of your episode would be You're Physically Disabled Before Your Wedding. What now? Oh my goodness. So before we get into that, Chris, would you mind sharing more with What Now Tribe of who you are and really what life was like prior to becoming physically disabled?
Sure, yes. If the intro is not enough, here's a little bit more about me. Yes, I was born with some disabilities from what's called CRS, which is not all that common today, but it was back in my day. That stands for congenital rubella syndrome, which loosely translated, if you do not know what that is, it means my mom was exposed to the German measles while carrying me. Although she really did not have any sickness, I was affected by the exposure while I was in her womb. The story that I've been told, and I call it a story because I don't know if we can ever verify it to be factual, but this part I know is factual. She was working at a high school as a health teacher and a physical education teacher. And we believe one of the students came to school that day with German measles who should have stayed home and infected my mom. And I got lovely parting gifts of some birth defects, which included visual impairment. I'm 2200 in my left eye, 2300 in my right. I've never been able to read out of my right eye unless it was a giant billboard or the big McDonald's sign. Who cannot recognize McDonald's? It's a
Right.
big old notches. Everybody knows what those are. And it left me, as I've aged, with some problems with depth perception, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, with these visual impairment, I that was a birth defect, and the other one was a congenital heart condition, which is a constricted aorta. So I had many, well, maybe not many, but several cardiac surgeries before I was 1 month old to stabilize that before I can come home. Had additional cardiac surgeries growing up as a child, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. As I was growing up as a child, I was late to talk and speak. Now, this was kind of a concern because CRS could have caused me deafness, as well as total blindness, mental retardation, and other lovely parting gifts. I was very fortunate. I only had a constricted aorta and visually impaired. But I was late at learning how to speak and talk. And when I did speak, I had a severe speech impairment, which required me to start speech therapy before I started preschool. And as I grew through life, I was in speech therapy into about ninth grade when I decided I'm done with that. And they didn't push it anymore. But during the years of school, I had undiagnosed ADHD, that where the neurodiverse comes in. And I was invited to seek education elsewhere at the end of second grade, at the 10th day of my freshman year of high school, and two times in two different colleges. So
I
uh,
love the way you put that. You were invited to seek education
elsewhere.
elsewhere.
Now, the ironic thing is the high school one, even though I was invited to seek education elsewhere, I did earn the privilege to return to that high school for my junior and senior year and graduate on time with my classmates. And 1 quarter, I'm proud of this, 1 quarter I made honor roll grades. My grades were never that great, but 1 quarter I did. I can brag about that.
That's fantastic.
So before my physical injury, I had gotten to a point with my vision that I had to use a white cane to get around in our community I lived in at that time in Northern California. So that kind of brings you up to speed of what my life was like before. I was had been expelled from a college, fought that expulsion, and being expelled, I thought, what am I going to do? I lost my job at the college when I got expelled. I was also invited to find employment elsewhere. So I decided I'm going to start my own eBay business from home. This is like year 2000, 2001. And so I did. And when I got expelled, I came home. I was really upset about it. I said, okay, now what? Well, I'm going to fight the expulsion because my girlfriend at the time, we were not engaged yet, was still working at the college, and I like to go there and see her after and when she's getting off work and meet her there. And with an expulsion and being told I would be charged for trespassing going on the college, I had to fix that problem. But
Right.
I did start working self-employed as on eBay, and it really ramped up my game and got to the point of being very successful selling and running an eBay business from my home. So at the right before all of this happened, where I did acquire the physical disability that we're going to be talking about, I was working from home. I had a white cane, and and I was trying to make it through life. And I got went in for an annual checkup for my heart because of my constricted aorta. And my doctor, I thought it'd be no big deal. He said, everything's fine. See you next year. And he said, no, you are going to have an angiogram. And I went, okay. And he left the room and had me watch this film. And what an angiogram is, I went through that. And we went through the angiogram and came out of it. And they said, well, we need to fix your constricted aorta. It's getting too narrow now. Now we're going to have to do an ascending to descending aortic bypass. And that brings you up to the moment that we are about to talk about, where
Okay,
I
so
was at.
before we talk about that, thank you so much for all of that because, oh my goodness, first of all, you've got the best attitude
Thank you.
and your positivity. I mean, because you've been through a lot of things throughout your life, and even just through your, elementary school, middle school, high school, you had a lot of challenges. And so having the vision and the heart and the neurodiverse, that ADHD thing on top of everything, did you have good friends or did you have a good support system around you when you were going through school?
Ah,
Or was it
friendships have been
more,
very difficult for me. I'll be
yeah,
very honest with you about that. And I'm going to say something I never said on a podcast before. It's exclusive for you, the first to hear. Although I discussed this with my wife, and I'm going to discuss it with my doctor, and I discussed it with one of the two other people. There is some overlap in the neurodiverse community between ADHD and autism. Although I've not been diagnosed, I don't want to claim that. I
no.
do suspect I may be a little bit on that spectrum because so I have a lot of anxiety with social interactions in person. Zoom is fine because if I'm uncomfortable, and I would not do this to you, I can hang up on you and I can
Please
move on my
don't.
day. But I'm not going to do that. It'd make a really bad episode and make me look bad. So I don't do that. But I do have a lot of trouble with social anxiety, and understanding the nuances of a friendship and a relationships are very complicated to me. I have a lot of when I was a kid, I would have horrific anxiety and I would act out when we were going to go and go to family events or family at the house. It caused me a lot of anxiety. So I had a few friends. I've not been blessed with a lot of friends because I think it maybe me. I just don't understand how to do that, and it's very awkward to me. But I did have a few. My girlfriend at the time. I don't get this. I am very uncomfortable with social interaction. I have a shirt that reads, "You read my shirt. That's enough social interaction for one day."
That's
I actually
funny.
have a T-shirt that says that. But I have a wonderful marriage. It's been 20 plus years, and we can go into that more later. But she was supportive. But the people who were most supportive were some wonderful teachers that I had. And I lived in a wonderful neighborhood where we had neighborhood moms. My mom and a couple other moms, we all helped work together to raise us kids, and we have very supportive and understanding parents in the neighborhood. But as far as friends go, like actual close friends of my age, not that many, because that's always been very difficult for me.
Oh, thank you so much for going into that and explaining that and sharing it here first. But you know what? Isn't it nice to be able to even just get that off your shoulders, to be able to share it?
Yeah, it is. I'm really cautious about that because I'm a very big advocate of not self-diagnosing.
Oh, most
But
definitely. I
but I
agree
have
with
a
that.
I have a great nephew is on autism spectrum. He has been diagnosed with it. He's 5, and he spent a year spending mornings here while his mom drove a school bus before she came home and picked him up before he started kindergarten. And I noticed a lot of things that he was going through, and I thought back in my life, I thought that could be me. That makes sense. I also interviewed a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum on my podcast, and I started piecing it together. And I'm gonna have to have that conversation with my doctor to find out, is this possible?
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. But you know what though? You have turned out amazingly.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And I agree with not diagnosing you and taking on diagnosis as who you are, because it has nothing to do with who you are as a person, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, so good. So good that you are so well aware of that. So you've mentioned your girlfriend and you've mentioned your wife, and you said that you've been together for over 20 years now. So when exactly did you guys get engaged?
Okay, we had our first date, and this is kind of a fun story. Um, I I, I had some previous relationships. They did not work out, obviously, because it's not good to be dating and being married while dating. It doesn't work.
So true.
Trust me, unless you like to have spent a lot of money on alimony. So
Mm-mm.
I met her at a computer lab at the college, and I walked into the lab. I thought she was cute. And she thought I was cute, but we were too uncomfortable to say anything to each other. And I was in there for a class, and every time I raised my hand for help, hoping she would come over, my stupid instructor came over and helped me. He must have thought I was an idiot.
Well,
I kept
dang
raising
it.
my hand. So we walked away, never saw each other. And about 2 months later, I'm on this dating site, Yahoo Personal, which is now, I think, I don't know, eHarmony or something. I don't know what happened to it. But anyway, and we connected that way, not knowing we had seen each other 2 months before. And all. And I went this way because being a person with a disability with a white cane, I've been turned down by girls, and maybe some of them turned me down because of my disability. So I went this way, online dating, to develop that relationship first, then bring in the disability. Now that I'm ashamed of it, but I did not want to scare someone away. I wanted someone to get to know me first, then my disability. So we went out on our first date January 3rd, 2000, and we started dating then. And I feel very lucky. A lot of people are scared of dating as a person with a disability, and because they think it's going to turn people off, and it does at times. I look at it as my superpower. And we talked about my positive attitude. Because she knew I had a white cane, I was visually impaired. I never feared about losing her. And that's how we started dating and getting involved in each other's lives. And I proposed to her on May 18th, 2022, 2002. Yeah, 20 years. I'm time traveling.
Yes.
2002. I proposed to her on that date. And then a little over 2 months later, my world changed.
Yes, yes. Okay, I just wanted to establish the relationship that you were in, that you were engaged, and then you were told you had to have these tests and were told that you had to have surgery. And so, how did you feel about this surgery and how prepared were you like the day before? What was it like?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, I was told about the angiogram in February of 2002. We were not engaged at that point,
Okay.
and but we were very close. And I told her, "Don't worry about coming to the doctor with me. Every year he says I'm fine, no problem." And I'm
Mhm.
in the exam room, and I mentioned he's showing me the video. I'm calling her on my cell phone. Dear, we have a problem. So I had to bring her up to speed, and we went. She was there for my angiogram February of 2002. So we got the news I was going to have surgery, and you go through you meet the surgeon, you go through getting the insurance to say yes, we'll pay for that, and then it was coming close. The surgery was on July 25th. This is July 24th. The day before. I am super anxious about the surgery. I've had cardiac surgeries before, and they went fine, but this one I was anxious about. And one of the things that always helped me feel better, well, two things. One, my parents knew all the scary stuff. And before the surgery as an adult, they tell you, I need you to fill this out in case something goes wrong and you die. I went, holy crap, I'm gonna die. That was stuff my parents dealt with when I was a kid. I don't deal with that. And it freaked me out. And I realized every surgery I had as a child, I always saw the anesthesiologist the day before. So I insisted with my cardiac surgeon to set up a meeting with me and the anesthesiologist, thinking that would make me feel more relaxed. It didn't.
Mm.
I was at that time on SSI, supplementary security income, and that meant I was in the state of California. I was on Medi-Cal, which is insurance for people with disabilities, low-income people. So the anesthesiologist, this is my opinion, he may have a different story, profiled me as somebody who did not know what he was doing or talking about as somebody stupid that's on disability, you know. And so he asked me questions, and before I finished answering them, he would interrupt me with another question. So he's not listening to me. And he asked me, do you know what the doctor's going to do? And I started explaining it detail by detail, the same way my cardiac surgeon had explained it to me, maybe not with the medical terms, but, the best that a lay person can do. And he said, oh, no, 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 you don't know what you're talking about. And I left there so frustrated and disappointed. And I came back to the apartment and I said, that's it. I'm not having the surgery. And my fiance was waiting for me at the apartment. She lived at her own place, but she just came over there to wait for me to come home because we're going to meet there. And I told her, that's it. I'm not going to have the surgery. And she said, I'm not going to sit here and watch you die. And I went into my bedroom and I laid down and that I was like very upset. What do I do? It's 4:30 in the afternoon. It's almost too late to call my cardiac surgeon. What am I going to do at this moment?
Wow. Yeah, so obviously you ended up having the surgery. And when was it that you learned that something had not gone right? And what exactly happened?
Well, that night before the surgery, I did not sleep. I was up. I took like 8 showers because they tell you need to be clean for the surgery, keep down infections and all that stuff. I paced the apartment and all. At 4 o'clock that morning, my fiance came over and she said, "Let's go to the hospital." And I stalled to go there. And that morning of the surgery, I finally got to the hospital, got me checked in, and was supposed to wait in the waiting room for pre-op. I waited in the hallway, and my pastor was there with us. And it took him and my wife, well, at the time, fiance, to talk me into going into that waiting room. And I finally said, I got to man up. I got to do this. So I went in and they put me onto the gurney. And they were rushing around because they were late, and everyone was screaming. And I said, I don't want an epidural, and I don't want to be in a ventilator. And I kept screaming that, and then suddenly everything went black. That's when I went out. And then I woke up the next day on a ventilator. I mean, later that day on the ventilator, and they couldn't take it out because I wasn't breathing deep enough. Because one of the complications from the surgery, which I did not tell you before, one of my lungs, the only way to get it inflated is twisted. So I have a twisted lung from the operation. So it took a day for them to get me off the vent. And then they said, okay, we don't want you to get pneumonia. I don't want pneumonia. That's bad stuff. We're going to have you get up and take a few steps, and then we get back in bed. So I sat up, I swung my legs over the right side of the bed. I put my feet up on the down on the floor, and I started to stand, and bam, instead of standing, I fell hard on my knees on the linoleum floor. That's a tough word. And they helped me back up on the bed. And I thought, well, I've been out of it, been an event and all. I'm weak. That's fine, no problem. They came in a second time and did that. And this time I said to the nurse, I'm a little bit worried about falling. Can you give me something to hold on to? Well, she gave me this IV pole that had 3 wheels at the bottom that moves.
That's
I
going to
thought,
roll
that's
right
not going
out
to
from
really
underneath you.
help. But I
No.
was in no mood to argue with her. I said, fine, whatever. So I tried it again. This time I fell even faster. And then all the nurses they got me back in the bed, the gurney, and they scurried back to the nurses station because this was a CVICU that was an open CVICU. So there's like 5 beds in it. And I could tell they were concerned because they were shuffling, making phone calls and all. And at that moment, I started to realize something was wrong, but not realizing it enough that I was accepting it. I just knew they were upset about something. I wasn't sure what. But it did turn out that was a moment that I probably should have really made the connection. Uh-oh, we have a problem here, Houston.
Yeah, no kidding. So when you were trying to get up and everything, could you feel your legs? Could you feel your feet? Any of that? Or were you just not quite in the mindset to be thinking about that?
I don't think I was in the mindset to think about it, but I was aware when I put my feet on the floor that they were touching the floor. But as far as feeling my legs, you probably get up and walk around all the time. And you don't even realize your legs are there. It's so natural. You don't even think, okay, am I feeling my legs before I get up? You just do it. So to answer your question, no, I did not really even try to become aware if I'm feeling my legs, but I knew I was touching the floor because I did feel my feet touch the floor, or I felt they're not going down any further. I must be touching the floor. That natural instinct we all have that we do without thinking.
Right, exactly. The things that our subconscious just takes
Right.
care of, just like our hearts beating or
Hmm.
our breathing, right? It's like what we've always done, we believe that we should be able to do, and that's the way it's going to be.
Right.
So when you're feeling this and all of a sudden you're hitting the floor and you're hitting the floor and you're hitting the floor, what did you ultimately find out was wrong?
Well, ultimately, I found out a few days later after I was moved out of the CVICU, which after all that happened, and this should have been a clue something bad had happened. I was moved out of the general area of the CVICU where the 5 beds into a private room in the CVICU. That should have been a clue. But I thought, oh
Yes.
great. My doc, because in the open area, my fiance could only spend about 5 to 10 minutes with me 2 or 3 times a day. In the private room, they didn't care how long she stayed. That should have been a clue. When they moved me out of the CVICU into a private room, which I knew my insurance would not cover, that should have been another clue. Something bad has happened. But I thought, well, and we asked my cardiac surgeon, why are you doing this? He said, well, you guys are engaged. I want you guys to have some time together. And that should have been a scary sentence, like, am I going to die? It should have been my follow-up to that. But I went, no, that's cool. So
It's
we
like,
went into the,
thanks.
yeah, thanks, doc. So we went into the private room, and they had me do an MRI, and yeah, I'm claustrophobic, and they had me go into this MRI tube for a 45-minute test, and we were all concerned, am I going to be able to do that? And I did. I had to come out once for 5 minutes. I got really hot and sweaty because, as we know, uh, what we found out will explain why I got hot and sweaty. But they did the scans and they discovered I had survived an ischemic stroke to my spinal cord. Now they did not tell me that at the point time. They told me I had a spinal cord injury. And they started telling me where it was. I know it's in the thoracic, but I started tuning it out because everybody I knew, or this was my belief, which was wrong, I learned, that once you have a spinal cord injury, you don't recover. That's it. You don't get any better. And I did not want to hear that. So I tuned that out. But that's when I found out what was going on a few days later after my MRI, that I had a injury to my spinal cord, which I learned later in life with people with spinal cord injuries. We don't always sweat or regulate our body heat like other people do. So that's probably why I got a little overheated in the MRI.
Yeah. Well, plus you were under extra stress, which can also cause
That's
that
true.
overheating and all of that. But so what was it? How did this happen? I mean, because you went in for this life-saving surgery for your heart.
Mhm.
How did this injury to your spine occur?
Okay, the hospital won't tell me because they don't want to get sued.
Right.
But from what we understand, is either I got too much oxygen or not enough oxygen to my spinal cord when my blood pressure either rapidly accelerated or dropped during the surgery. Which, from what we can tell, and we did take the papers to a malpractice lawyers, that that did happen during the surgery. And from the notes that we were able to decipher, the doctor was aware of it, but the anesthesiologist may have went on his own and made his own decision. We're not sure about that. I don't want to accuse anyone of that, but that is what we understand. Now, the other thing I noticed in the notes is my birthday changed during those notes. Sometimes I was born 2 years earlier, well, 2 years later than my actual birthday. And I found out a few years later by accident. I was doing some follow-up tests on this in a waiting area, and I ran into, and I did this at jury duty too, another person with my exact same name in my community. So I also wonder if some of the medical files got crisscrossed and they mixed in the other patient's info with mine, which gave them inaccurate information that they needed during the surgery.
Oh,
But none of
goodness.
this I can prove. These are my theories.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I'm sure that you've had a lot of time on your hands since that time to really think about it and wonder why and all of these kinds of things. And yet, initially, after this occurred, you had to make a decision on what your treatment plan would be. And what was recommended isn't necessarily what you chose. Can you tell us what you chose and why?
Yes. I started out with a wonderful physical therapist at the hospital named Joe. And in fact, he and I are still connected on Facebook to this day. And he did the basic assessment of me. And I can't prove this, but my suspicions are this. I did not do all that great on it. But because I think he saw my drive, my determination, I was engaged and all, I think he fudged a little bit, just a little bit. So I would qualify for therapy while I was in the hospital, and the insurance would pay for it, which we did. But about 2 weeks in, um, hospitals are short-term facilities. They don't want you to stay there for long, and they encourage you to leave by giving you really crummy hospital food. So you don't want to stay.
That'll work.
See that work all the time. So I had a choice, and they told me I could either go home and go to outpatient therapy, or I can go to a rehabilitation hospital. Now, if I went home, I obviously at that point was in no condition to live in my one bedroom apartment by myself. And my parents lived about 2 or 3 blocks away from my apartment. So they said, you can stay at our place, you can sleep on the couch, we'll take care of you. And I love my parents, but at that point, my parents were in their 60s and they did not need to be trying to lift me up with their age and help me with basic things. So I made the very difficult decision because I really wanted to go home, go to sleep, wake up, and this whole thing be over. I thought it was a bad dream, and if I would go away, and don't worry, I'll be fine in a few days. But I chose the decision to go into a rehabilitation hospital because I knew that was going to be the best chance I could have for the fullest possible recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was your experience there? I mean, because I know that most people looking at you with the injuries that you sustained, like you said, there's a stigma or a thought process around people with spinal cord injuries that they don't come back from it, right? What was the thought process of the people that were working with you at this facility?
Well, the facility itself, let's talk about my experience there, and we'll talk about the people there too. When I first got there, I was transferred there via ambulance and it got checked in and all, and they got me into a bit. And this is a old hospital that was converted into a rehabilitation center. So it was one of these hospitals where there were wards where there were some private rooms, but most rooms will have 4 or 5 patients in it. And these were old style hospital beds. I mean, this is like, let's go back in time about 40 years
Aye, aye, aye.
type of thing, or 50 years, because it was the first city hospital for the city we lived in, and they converted it over. And we got me into a wheelchair, and my fiance pushed me around, and we looked around, and it scared the day. I've never been in a rehabilitation hospital. I saw things that I never had seen before. I saw people who had strokes who were barely able to verbalize and communicate. I saw one patient in a room. I did not go, peeking the room, but from the hallway, I could see instead of a bed, the best way I can describe it, it looked like a big red um, bouncy cage kids get into. And I guess it's to help with pain management and keep them from falling out of the bed. And they like a zipper in it on a door on it, with mesh around it where the nurses could take care of the patient and all. And I thought, where am I and what have I gotten myself into? It frightened the daylights out of me. Now, the physical therapy staff there and the occupational therapy staff and all the others were wonderful. The nursing staff for people that I don't think could have gotten a job anywhere
Oh,
else. The
no.
nursing staff was scary. I mean, it was frightening. I mean, some of these people are like, did they just say, "Hey, the guy standing over there but at the bus station by himself, that's drinking out of a paper bag. Would you like a job as a nurse?" So it was frightening. The staff, the medical staff, and all, but the therapy was wonderful. It was great.
Well, how long were you there, and what kind of improvements did you see in your abilities?
I was there for 3 weeks, and they were very happy to see me leave. So
You were asked to, go somewhere else
I
again?
was invited to seek therapy somewhere
Yes,
else.
yes.
Almost that's almost a truthful statement. During that time, I did see marginal improvement. I did learn how to do a few is it BEL? Uh, I can't remember what it's called, but your basic life skills. I think that's what
Okay.
it's called. Anyway, learned how to do that. And my favorite therapy was occupational therapy because I want to get my life back. That's what I want to do. I got bored in weight training and weightlifting by raising up, lifting down, lifting weights to build up your upper body strength, which is important, but I got bored. I was the guy in school that hated physical education. Ironic, since my mom was a PE teacher. I was so much of a complainer in PE in college. I had a college PE teacher, an adaptive PE teacher, said, "Look, I'll give you a C if A, you promise never to come back to my class again, and if you promise never to come back to my class again, and you never take it." Each semester, at the end of the semester, he would have a pizza party for all of his students who have disabilities. He said, "You can come to that pizza party each year if you never come into my classroom again." So that's how much I hated PE. So I always got yelled at because I would lay down the weights, and which could damage equipment. I should not have done
Right.
that. I was wrong. But I also was very frustrated about what had happened to me. So if you're a SpongeBob fan, you'll get what this means. I started using a lot of sentence enhancers, aka
Oh,
profanity.
yes.
And unlike some of the people there that were stroke survivors who were nonverbal, I was very verbal.
You were making up for all of their silence, right?
Yes, I was. I was expressing myself because a few weeks ago, I was able to walk from one side of my town to another, from the mall to my apartment, which was across town, like a 10-mile walk, no problem. Now I need help getting myself out of bed and dressed in the morning. I was upset about this and
Yeah.
I was verbalizing it, and it wound up, they had a very big meeting. They almost kicked me out. We managed to avoid that. But when I told them I'm thinking about that I'm ready to leave on Friday, they said, "You can leave today." But I stayed to the end of the week. We got everything done and all. But what I don't think you've asked me about, and I like to just touch upon, or expand upon, it's a scariness, sir. There were
Yes.
my fiance would come there every morning at 6 and help me, and stay there every night at 8, which was wonderful. I loved her for doing that. But at night, I wanted her to go home. They would not let her stay at night because we had other patients in the room. And at night, I would lay awake, hearing noises, people groaning and making noises because they had a stroke. And some of them were, I mean, the stroke may have done some brain damage. I'm not criticizing, making fun of these people,
No.
but there were noises and groans at night I never heard before, and it kept me awake. And I laid there wondering, because my recovery was going slower than I wanted it to. I thought, am I ever going to be able to go home?
Mhm.
Am I ever going to have that happily ever after that I want, that every, and this is not sexist, okay, but every girl dreams of in their life with the person they're in love with? Am I going to be able to give that to my fiance? And I would lay awake at night worried about that, praying and in tears, hoping that I would be able to go back home and live independently and not have to be in long-term care the rest of my life.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine what the darkness brought when you were trying to sleep and just being there and having that environment around you. And then also the concerns that you had about your future. Did you have any other concerns about going home? Was there any fears about going home?
No, not really. I knew there might be some modifications I would have to do to my apartment, but I knew, because being a person with a disability all my life, we are great at problem solving. And I knew if I just get home, whatever problem came up, I could probably problem solve it or get somebody who can help me figure out how to problem solve it. So that, no, there's really not that much of a concern at home. Maybe concern the first night at home and nobody there, there's no nursing staff. What happens if I get stuck? Those kind of concerns. But overall, larger concerns that once I get home and get through the first couple of days, uh, any problems come up, I could problem solve them. So it was minimal concern about coming home.
Well, and it also goes to your mindset. That's you have such a powerful mindset going into this change in your life. And you've mentioned you being engaged in this amazing woman that would come and support you in the hospital. And so how now that you're in a wheelchair, how did your relationship fare and how did she really play a role in your recovery?
And she has been wonderful. At the hospital, not the rehab, but the hospital I was in, she slept sitting up in a very uncomfortable chair every single night in my private room with me. And she would help turn me, help helped me open up milk cartons because I had some really bad spasticity, finger control right after the injury. And she would help me with that. And she would be there for my spirits. And she would only go home maybe a couple, for a couple hours every few days, take a shower and bring new clothing, that kind of thing. So she was there constantly. And when it was time to be close to discharge, we worked with occupational therapy, so I can learn how to transfer in and out of her car using a transfer board and my wheelchair. And she got all my medical equipment home, my shower chair, my potty chair, because I was not ready to maneuver into my bathroom to use the actual commode. So she did all of that. She was very supportive of all of that. We got home, she brought all that stuff in. She set it up for me. When when I got back home, one of the first thing that was a problem was getting my wheelchair over this little like 2-inch door jamb at the bottom. She and I went out, we got some wood, and she on her own came up with a makeshift ramp so I can get in and out of my apartment. She has been wonderful, more than I could have asked for. And I know I'm very, very blessed and lucky because there are many people in the disabled community, if they're dating someone or they're engaged or even married and they become physically disabled to the extent that I became, the partner will leave them. And I know, and that breaks my heart when I hear that happening to people, and reminds me of how fortunate and how blessed I am that my wife, her name is Kimberly, is in my life.
Oh, Kimberly, you're amazing. You're amazing. Thank you for being the rock that Chris needed during this time. So, okay, so how long have you been married now?
20 years. And one thing I forgot to mention is once I got home, and we're going to talk about my outpatient physical therapy, she, whenever she could, if she wasn't working, when she was working, I took the paratransit system. But if she wasn't working, she would drive me there, be there with me in physical therapy, and drive me back home. She
Wow.
was there for everything that she could be there for me.
She sounds
Every
like
doctor
an
appointment.
angel. Sounds like
Yes.
an angel. So grateful that she's there in your life with you. So let's talk about that therapy. Let's talk about what expectations the therapist had for you and what expectations you had for yourself.
I don't know what the expectations the therapists have for me. They really didn't tell me. And I'm glad they didn't. I'm also glad of something else that happened earlier that I did not get a chance to mention. When the neurologist told me I had a spinal cord injury, he never told me what my prognosis would be. He never said to me, "You'll never walk again," or "You will be able to walk again." And I think my cardiac surgeon told him, "Don't do that." And I'm glad no one did, because when people start telling you what you can and cannot do, especially a doctor and you have a medical condition, they're doctors. For most part, we trust them. We think they know everything, and they say, "Well, you'll never walk again." That can get into your mind and stop you from doing that. So I never was told what my outcome would be. And my physical therapist and outpatient, they never told me what their objectives were for me. They just told me what I needed to do each week. They charted it and all. My objective out of physical therapy was to regain as much of my mobility and independence as I could, because I went into once I started accepting what had happened to me, and got past the part, well, by Labor Day, I'll be walking, I'll be fine. When I was in the hospital, I was unable to stand and walk. I thought, well, they had me have the catheter in me. And I thought, as soon as they can remove that, I can walk. Well, they removed it. I couldn't walk. Okay, by Labor Day, I'll be fine. And that wasn't true. And I started accepting it. And I realized I want to have an attitude of optimistic, but yet realistic. I believe that I will walk again in my life. Although I know realistically that might not happen, I still have that belief today that I'll be able to walk independently again in my life. So in my physical therapy, my outpatient physical therapy, my objective was to do everything I can to regain as much of my mobility and independence that I had before this nightmare began.
Oh, that's so good to have that outlook for yourself and to have that goal to be reaching for. I mean, because reality hits us in the face sometimes, right? I mean, like
Right.
you had an experience on your first solo adventure out on your own, right? Do you
Oh
want to share
yes.
that with the What Now
Yeah.
tribe?
Yes. Yes. It was the first Saturday I was home. Maybe it was the second Saturday. I came home on Friday. That's right. So it may have been the second Saturday I was home. So I've been home for like 8 days. And I wanted to go out and do the things I did before, but I'm going to do them from the wheelchair. And I wanted my fiance to go with me just in case something went wrong. Well, she said, I can't. I'm supposed to be a bridesmaid at my friend's wedding. And her friend did not like me. That's why I was not invited. That's okay. I was not
Oh,
fond of her either. And that's probably mean for me to say because she has passed away. I probably should not have said that. But anyway, that is done. It's on the tape. So we'll just leave it there. And so I said, fine, you can't do that. I'm going to go do this all by myself. So I got myself out of my apartment, managed to get out without my cat escaping because my cat had a nervous breakdown from me being gone for a month. She was very unhappy about that. I got out. I was managed to close the door, lock the door, wheel up out of my apartment down to the sidewalk that could take me to a bus stop. Well, as I was wheeling out, the exit from the parking lot is not exactly smooth. It has some curves in it. And I tipped over and I landed in the road where cars drive anywhere from 35 to 45 miles per hour on the side of my wheelchair.
oh my
Yeah, I see
gosh.
the and now for those that listening, you should see how much of a shocked look is on your face right now. If they can only see that.
My
So
jaw
it,
dropped. My jaw
yeah,
dropped.
your jaw drop. And so wait for the video of this on the YouTube channel. You're gonna love her reaction.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So how did you get back
Some
up?
Fortunately, some kind driver helped get me up, and before I could thank him, he was gone. And I just kept wheeling down the road. And then as I got close to the bus stop, one of my wheels in the wheelchair got off the sidewalk, and I got stuck on that sidewalk with one wheel wedged into the grass next to it. So I had my cell phone with me. Thank goodness I did not leave my house with my cell phone. And I called my fiance or my mom or whatever to come and get me. And my mom called my fiance and said, what do I do? I mean, he's stuck. And she said, let's go get him back up and let him go because he's not going to take no for an answer. So she did. She left. I managed to get on a bus. I got to Target and I got off the bus, and the bus stops at the end of the road and you have to go across the big parking lot. And I was wheeling. I picked up so much speed. I almost crashed into the wall at Target because I did not calculate slowing down soon enough. You know, like you're going 80 miles an hour and there's 10 feet to the stoplight and you went, oh no, maybe I should put on the brakes. That was me. And I thought I was going to cream into the building, but I
Oh
didn't.
no.
I did some browsing and shopping at Target, made it safely back across the parking lot. This time, not trying to be a speed demon. I did it more safely. Got back on the bus, went to the transit center, transferred to another bus, and while I was transferring, I'm not that great at maneuvering the wheelchair in the bus because I've not done that before. I had one bus driver tell me, until you learn how to ride in a wheelchair in a bus, you have no business on the buses. And that hurt. That was very hurtful. He was right, but it was hurtful. So I got off the bus at the stop I wanted to get at, which was near my favorite pizza parlor. And I just said, that's it. And I called my fiance. She was done with the wedding. She came and got me, and we went home.
Oh my goodness. You know what though? There's so many things in there. I mean, first of all, just the fortitude that you had that you were going to be independent and, Kimberly recognizing that independence that you have in yourself and knowing that this is something he's got his mind set on. So you may as well just help him get back up on his wheels and be able to keep on going to where you wanted to go. I
Mhm.
mean, that says a lot about the strength that's inside of you for sure. So, I mean, you just mentioned how you were treated by the bus driver. I am sure that in this experience that you've had, that other people have kind of reacted to you not always kindly. Can you share and how you handled it?
Yes. A few days later, I went to the college. This time I took paratransit. It was safer and all because they help you more with securing your wheelchair and all. So I took paratransit to meet my fiance at the college where she was working because she's going to get off work. We're going to have dinner together. Then she's going to go to the other campus to teach a class. And I went into the lab that she worked, the computer lab. She was a computer lab administrator. And one of the teachers who also knew me personally, I guess nobody had told her what I had done on summer vacation. You know, sort of go,
Right,
what have you
right.
done during summer vacation? Nobody had told her. So she walked in there and her jaw dropped when she saw me, similar to the reaction you had a few moments ago. But yours dropped even further. So you win that prize.
Woohoo!
Congratulations. Yeah. So her jaw dropped. And I had bus drivers who, when I got a little bit better about riding the buses, They just had this look of pity and their jaw dropping, seeing that a person who used to bebop around town, always walking, now in a wheelchair, needing help getting on and off a bus. And one night, I was at the at the campus with my fiance. She was teaching a class, and I was waiting for her. I was reading a book and listening to some music on my Walkman, and I had to take care of the call to nature. And while I was taking care of my call to nature, I was really feeling dejected by all these people's reaction of how they looked at me and saw my disability. And I turned to the left because my wheelchair was to my left. I pointed at it and I said, "This does not define me." And that was empowering. And I rephrased it to, "It doesn't define me," which turns out to be the title of my second self-published book. It Doesn't Define Me: How I Rebuilt My Life After Surviving an Ischemic Stroke to My Spinal Cord. One thing I learned is shorter titles and book titles.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's another story for another day. And that became my mantra. I wanted people to see me for all that I could do. I wanted people to see me as a successful eBay seller, as a man that's engaged, and all my abilities I could do. And then maybe they mention, "Oh, and by the way, he's in a wheelchair," if they even mention that at all. And that became my mission in life. Not that I'm ashamed of my disability. I'm very proud of them because they're part of who I am. But I did not want people to see that as the first thing they see in me, because unfortunately in our society, we often judge people by their disabilities more than their abilities. And I wanted people to see my abilities first before my disabilities.
Yes. Good for you. Yes. I mean, you had struggles clear along the whole way. I mean, your insurance company even didn't believe that you would be able to recover, and they kind of gave up on you, right?
Yes, they did. They did.
Yeah. So what happened
They
with that? How did you ultimately learn to be more mobile?
They did about 6 or 8 months after my injury, because the physical therapist was sending reports into how he's doing. My progression was continuing, but it was slowing down. And when you have an injury, some injuries more than others, you have a period in life, and it can vary depending on the injury, called spontaneous recovery, and that's usually right after the injury. Now, I know for stroke people, it's like the first 6 months. I don't know what it is for spinal cord people, but so you're going to have more recovery at the beginning of the offset, and then things will kind of slow down. So I was slowing down in my recovery, and my insurance company said, "Well, we're not going to pay for outpatient therapy for anymore." I thought, well, I can't afford that. So, but if you guys want to give up on me, that's fine. I'm not giving up on myself. So it took me a few years, excuse me, but I found ways during that time to continue my therapy. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and I had this hallway that was kind of narrow that led from the living room to my bedroom and to the bathroom. So I would put my hands on the wall, my palms of my hands on each wall, and using that for balance, like the parallel bars, I taught myself how to walk up and down the hallway. Now, when I did this, let me tell you, if you think about doing this at home because you have a similar injury, first of all, make sure you have a phone with you in case something happens. And two, don't do anything that puts you in a dangerous situation. I did. I should not have done. I was very fortunate, but I don't want people doing this and getting injured and suing me. So please be careful when
Right.
you do that. I would do the same thing in my galley kitchen. I would put my hands on the counter like a parallel bar, and walk up and down to build my strength to do that. I also position my wheelchair in the galley bar up to a counter where I could do standing up from my wheelchair, which they taught me how to do in occupational therapy. So I did all of those things. And I learned how to, when my fiance would put the wheelchair in the back of our Ford Escort, her Ford Escort, we were still engaged, it wasn't mine. So I would be able to stand back there with her. Then I held onto the top of the car and walk sideways, and to get into the front seat of the car. And that was another thing I learned to do. So I did not have to use my transfer board anymore. Then about 5, 6, 7 years later, after my injury, we were at a Target store, and they had these cool scooters in them. You all have seen those, right? And I thought, I want to ride one of those. I got my own scooter, but I want to ride one of my own. And normally we took my wheelchair to Target with me. At that Target, we would get out of the car. At this point, we had an SUV. We would get out of the SUV. My wife would bring it the wheelchair, and I would get into it, and she would wheel me in, wheel me around the store, and come on out. And I just said, I want to ride the scooter. Now it'd be stupid for her to wheel me in. I get on the scooter. She takes a wheelchair back to the car, then comes back in and reverse the process to go out. So I'm going to learn how to do this. So we're at Target once and we pulled into the disabled parking. There's a red Target cart. Then I said, Kim, can you go grab that red cart from me? She did. So I grabbed onto it and it was not pretty. It was not easy, but I put my hands in the front of that cart, using that for balanceability. And I took my first steps to walk inside of a store on my own by using that red Target cart because I wanted to ride that scooter.
Oh
And
my
from that,
gosh.
I took that and I got myself a walker. I taught myself how to use a walker. And a walker is a device that you see with two wheels in the front and tennis balls in the back. Now I'm up to a rollator, which has four wheels on it. And I use that for my primary mode of transportation. And I use a scooter for longer distances because of my cardiac issue and getting fatigued. I'm not going to walk 10 miles with the rollator. Okay.
Right,
So,
right. No. But
but I
Chris,
taught myself to do that.
oh my gosh. Just your determination, your decision, your resiliency, your decisions to, take things further than anybody else thinks that you possibly can. I hope that the What Now tribe is listening so closely right now, because no matter what circumstance you are finding yourself in right now, guys, just make a decision. Don't listen to what all of the naysayers are saying about you and where you're at, and make a decision on where you want to be, and then just figure it out. It doesn't have to look pretty, right? It's just
Right.
do the next right thing to get you where you want to be.
Exactly. Don't let any situation or any individual tell you what you can or cannot do. Only you are able to define what you can and cannot do and what you can and cannot be. That's why I named my business hashtag define yourself, because it's up to you to define who you are and who you will become. Stop listening to other people who are telling you what you can't do.
Mic drop, boom. All right. So then let's get into this self-confidence thing, right? Because it's been really big and it's played a huge role in your comeback. And how can others use self-confidence in the challenges that they face?
Well, self-confidence has been one of the two major factors that have helped me get to where I am today. Maybe three. One, having a supportive wife. She's been wonderful. Okay, she has been. And I've been blessed to been able to be able to return or reciprocate her kindness, because right now she's battling stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. So I'm now taking care of her. So, um, but confidence has been part of it. Not to mention my faith. I am a man of faith, and one of my favorite scriptures, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, also gave me a lot of strength during that time, the uncertain times they've been through. But
Yeah.
confidence is a very key thing. And if you're lacking confidence to overcome whatever challenges you are having in your life, two things I like to tell you. First of all, if there's an obstacle that stands between you and what you want to do, stop seeing it as an obstacle or as a barrier. Because when we see an obstacle, we think, okay, that's it. I can't go anywhere. But if you look at it as a challenge, you can say, I eat challenges for breakfast. And I do, and they taste better than Wheaties or Cheerios. You have a challenge you can take on. An obstacle, you look at it as an immovable item, but a challenge you can take on. So you want to have that mindset. Is a challenge that I'm facing. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the program, you mentioned in my intro. I don't see them as disabilities. I see them as challenges, and you can take on those challenges. Now, to build your self-confidence to do that, if you're sitting there saying, Chris, I'm not confident enough I can do this. How do I do that? Well, you have it. You were all born with self-confidence, and life tears us down. What I tell people when I work with them in coaching or do any presentations, I have the thing called success balloons. And it's from the idea of hot air balloons. You ever seen those? They're
Oh yeah.
beautiful. My wife and I love those. We would love to someday go to the International Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And in the morning, they have this thing called Mass Ascension. All the balloons, groups of them, will rise above all the mountains, and they look beautiful. So I came up with this idea of success balloons. Every time you have done any little thing that was successful. I mean, it can be like when I was in the hospital after my injury, opening up a milk carton with my spasticity on my own. That was success for me that day. That became a success balloon. So you chart all the things that you do that our successes, and no matter how small and trivial they are, that will help build your self-confidence. And when you start getting the bigger things, like I earned my certification as a confidence life coach, earned other coaching certifications. I've earned awards for my volunteer work. I've earned my awards for being co-disabled employee of the year, etc. They're all on this wall. If you're watching this on the YouTube video, you'll see it. But if you're listening, just trust me, there's a beautiful wall back there
They are
that has
there. It's amazing.
all of my many of my certifications and awards and achievements up there. And that's what I call the success wall. And to build your success wall, you start with success balloons, because the success balloons will give you the confidence you need to the bigger things in life, so you can add to your own success wall.
Yes, that is so good. Thank you for sharing that. So what is one thing that you wish that you could go back and tell yourself before the surgery that caused the damage to your spine?
Yeah, and I've thought about that a lot in my life. I thought, if I knew then what I know now, would I have called my? I could go back and tell my younger self, call the doctor, tell him you're not comfortable with the anesthesiologist, meet with them, maybe get another anesthesiologist, whatever. But I also thought, if I did that, that would have changed the rest of my life. I would not have the credentials. Maybe credential is not the right word, but I would not be able to authentically connect with people in the physically disabled community and help them overcome their challenges, because I won't have the experiences. And they may say, well, you're not physically disabled. How do you understand and know the struggles I'm going through? So I don't think I would go back and tell myself anything, because I knew at that time when things were going bad, I have the confidence to do this. Yes, I was scared about, will I ever be able to go home and live independently? That was a realistic fear, but I had the confidence I can do it. But having the confidence does not mean I don't have fears. I do, but I knew I could work through it. Like I said earlier, whatever problem came up at home, I could probably find a solution to, because I can do that. But no, I don't think I would actually go back in time and tell my younger self, don't do this or make this phone call or whatever. Because that experience has equipped me for what I am doing today. So no, I don't think I would go back in time.
I respect and honor that answer, because I think that the difficulties that we go through are designed, as long as we look at them the right way, that they happen for us, not to us, to make us into who we need to be, to make that impact that God put us here to make.
Exactly. You pretty much said what I was going to say. Nothing happens to us. Everything happens for us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reinforcing that. So please share with the What Now Tribe what you are doing now, what your business is, and a little bit more about your books.
Sure. Let's talk about the book first. Oh, maybe let's talk about, I don't know. Let's see what comes out of my mouth here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So my business is hashtag define yourself. I do coaching and consulting through it. I do virtual speaking. I'm not traveling right now because I'm taking care of my wife. I love her dearly. And things can go wacky with that anytime. Hopefully not. So far, so good. So I do coaching and all, right, getting ramped up for one-on-one coaching, and we'll do some group coaching down the road and all. I also host a podcast called Successful, Self-Employed and Disabled. And the point of that podcast is to show people who have disabilities that just because you're disabled, that disability does not define you in a negative way. People who are disabled have created success in their lives, and we get them to share their stories of how they did that, how they became self-employed, why they chose that, and the role self-confidence have played in their success. So I've done that as well. I also have a new book coming out. At that time of taping is coming out. It's going to be coming out sometime in February. So I'm not sure when this is dropping. So it's either coming out or is out now, called Success Starts with Self-Confidence, which is the name of my coaching program, my signature speech, and the book is Success Starts with Self-Confidence. 10 Steps to Confidence for the Self-Employed Person with a Disability. And what it is, it's the 10 steps I went through that helped me develop the self-confidence I have today. I was at a point in my life before this injury that I was not very confident, and I was struggling in life, and I knew I had to do something about it. So I take people through that book, the 10 steps I did to build the self-confidence I am enjoying today. And it's a great read. I read it. It's a really good book. I wrote it too, so it's a really good book. And it gives you that insight into it. And that my hope for that book is this. I am a dinosaur. Okay. I crossed the big 5-0. And I look back upon my life, and yeah, you do that 5-0
Yes.
celebration dance. I look back at my life and said, what has given me or contributed to my success besides my faith? And I said, it is self-confidence. And I realized all my success in my life is because of my self-confidence. And all the things I did not succeed at, it's because of my self-confidence was low. And it took me 30 years to figure this out. And I don't want anyone who is disabled to go through 30 years and look back and say, I could have done more if I had more self confidence. So I wrote this book for people with disabilities so they can achieve success a lot quicker than I did. And now it's not only for people with disabilities. If you're not disabled, you're still going to get something out of this book. It's a great book, and it gives you some great insight and techniques on how you can discover, develop, and grow your self-confidence. And it's available exclusively on Amazon, paperback, and Kindle. I'll be doing an Audible format later on this year, and you can get it through my website, which in a moment I may give that web address if you allow me to.
Well, and
And
I'll also make it really easy for the episode or for the listeners. They'll be able to go to marcynettles.com/books to be able to find this new book, because this episode will drop like mid-March. So it will be
awesome,
out, and we can make sure that
awesome.
we have your book uploaded to our website too, so that it makes it really simple for them to find it.
That would be
Okay.
awesome. Yes, because I do have autographed copies on my website. I don't do the ones on Amazon because for some reason people don't want me to take a Sharpie to their Kindle reader. I don't know why. They're really fussy about that one.
Right. That's funny.
So it's a
That's
great
funny.
book. I encourage you to go and get it.
Yes, and also, we have got an amazing freebie from
Yes.
Chris today. He's actually offering you his cheat sheet, your next 3 steps to self-confidence. So just go to marcynettles.com/freebies, ask for the freebie for this episode, and we will get that sent right over to you, as well as take the time to find his book while you're there and get that purchased. And, I just want you to know, Chris, that I'm gonna be saying prayers for Kimberly,
Thank you.
for full restoration and healing, in Jesus' mighty name. And I invite all of the listeners to also put up a prayer for her healing and her recovery, and also for you, for your strength to take care of her continuously, because you have
Thank you.
such a beautiful relationship. She cared for you, and now it's a return on that,
Yes,
right? It's a return. So
very
how
much.
can our audience connect with you and find you?
But the best way to do that is my website, and that's thechrismitchell.com. And there's a lot of Chris Mitchells as a common name, but I'm the Chris Mitchell. So that's THECHRISMITCHELL.com. And from there, you'll be able to connect with me. You'll find my social media links. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I have no idea how to use Instagram, but I'm on it. So,
But you're there.
and I have a wonderful YouTube channel, which you can link to from there, that has over 200 videos that will help empower you to develop and grow the self-confidence, to see examples of successful, self-confident persons with disabilities who are self-employed, and some videos of presentations I've done in the past.
Fantastic. That's absolutely perfect. Well, Chris, you have been just an amazing guest today. Thank you for sharing your triumphant journey that has not always been easy, but you've made it. You've made it your own. So, congratulations, and thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you very much for having me, and the honor and the privilege of speaking with your wonderful tribe. And remember, success starts with self-confidence.
Amen. Thank you.